Hey guys, in the video, well actually the next series of videos coming up, I am working, well I just shot one long video doing a timing belt on a 2JZ, which I believe a lot of people need to know. I also did break the same video down into spark plug job and valve cover gaskets, so I apologize for me actually just being lazy and not wanting to shoot multiple videos. So if some things seem out of place or they, don't look right, it's because I just chopped up one video into a bunch of videos. So with that being said, I'll just compile everything into a big video showing how to replace the timing belt, a complete timing belt job on a 2JZ. So thanks for sticking with me. I will see you guys later.
There are a lot of things that we need to take off in order to get at everything we need. First off, by taking the this here engine cover off. It's just held on by 4 10mm bolts or nuts. Just lift this straight up, set it down, put the bolts back in it, that way you know where they go. I will try and take things off as complete as possible, so that way you don't have to go around, piecing every little piece together. I'll try and take off everything as we can. We need to take off this entire intake system up into this Y-pipe here, so that way we have access to the valve covers and everything else that we need. Right now I'm going to focus on taking this whole air assembly off. You can start by undoing this one 10mm right here that holds this air snorkel on. This will just slide straight off just like that. What I like to do is put the screws, if you can, put the screws back where they go. If not, get yourself like a little bag or something to mark what you need. That way you don't forget where things go. Okay, next thing I want to do is to undo this here evap connector. They're just little tabs. You just squeeze the tab and lift them off. Mass airflow sensor. Also just squeeze the tab and take it off. Do be careful with this stuff because it's going to be really fragile. The wiring harness you can just let sit for a minute and just let it hang there. It's fine. Now if you're looking at this here evap canister thing that comes on the side of the air box, there is one rubber hose that goes down back to the back of the engine. Pretty much just disconnect this here hose right here, just disconnect it from the side of the air box and just let that one hang there. You can leave that one there, and you can leave the actual solenoid attached to this whole box, so when we pull the whole box out, it'll just come as one. So we need to loosen up this here clamp right here, that where the air box goes into. It's just one 10mm clamp. Just loosen that guy up, just let him be on here. And there's a total of 3 bolts that are holding the air box on, 2 that you can see right here behind the box, and then there's one directly right behind the headlight, straight down right here. You have to get an extension and take that guy out. Again, be careful, you try not to break anything because all this stuff's going to be really old. So with that loose, you can go on ahead and just lift this whole entire air box out and set it down at the side. I'm going to put the screws back in the holes where I got them from. That way I don't forget where they go. Okay, so next thing we need to do is remove the rest of the intake that goes into the here throttle body. Right on the back of the intake there is a vacuum hose. It's just held on by 2 little clamps. You can just grab the hose with a pair of pliers and wiggle it around and loosen it up, and then just pull it straight off. It's just a vacuum breather that's in the back. And then you can also just remove it from the PCV valve that goes straight into the back of the motor. Just take that off and set it down to the side. This here piece is just held on by this one clamp right here that goes right to the throttle body. There's just a 10mm right here, and then you can just pull this whole guy straight off just like this. There's just this one 10mm clamp right here. That's it. Okay, so the first thing we want to do is just disconnect the various electrical connectors. There's one here, and one here. Just pretty much squeeze the tabs and they should just pull off. Again, some of them might be a little bit more difficult than others, and you can just kind of set them back to the side. You can also remove this here vacuum hose that's right here. just get yourself a pair of pliers and pinch the clamp and take the clamp off. You may have to twist these around in order to get them off. I'm going ahead and disconnect this here connector in the back as well. Right here you can see there's a little clamp right here. You don't actually have to take the clip off, but there's a 10mm right here that you can just loosen up, loosen the 10, and then this whole thing will come off. And as I said, just let that hang down to the side. You can put the screw right back where you got it from. Okay, the next thing you want to do is get yourself a, I believe this is a 14mm. 14mm wrench. That way you can loosen up this here throttle cable. Don't touch this side that's closest to the passenger side. Just loosen up the other side. And then if you can manually operate this. If you roll it around, you can see where it'll just slide right out of the side over here. And then you can just set the throttle cable down to the side. So the only thing now we have holding this guy on is these two 12mm bolts right here. And there's also right below a 12mm nut that holds this thing on a long bolt. So we'll have to loosen these guys right here, this 12 of the bracket, and then loosen this bracket right here from the cylinder head. There's two 12s right here as well. Also get yourself a pair of little pair of pliers right here to take this wiring harness off. Let me see if I can get in there with a skinny pair of pliers to take this here wiring harness off. I'm just gonna crack all these loose. This one, this one, this one, this one, this one, and then these two on the bottom. I'm just gonna crack them loose. I'm not gonna take them off. I'm just gonna loosen them up. I will tell you that this here isolator is rubber, so when you do this, it's gonna flex a lot. You might have the potential to break this. I like to just give a little bit of pressure right here on the front and loosen that up, so that way you don't risk cracking this, because that piece is probably hard to find by now. And you can throw your socket on the ground like I did. Once you got those loose, go on ahead and completely remove this bracket, which is held on by these four 12mm nuts. Okay, and just slide this here bracket off completely. And you can put the nuts right back, like I said, where they go. That way you don't forget. You could just set the bracket down wherever you'd like. So if you look on the other side, like I mentioned before, there is another coolant line that comes up and straight into the back of this here. I've already taken the clamp off. The clamp is right here where my pliers are. You can just loosen it up. It goes right into a brass fitting. Loosen that, and then you can just pull the pull this hose off. This one is generally pretty easy. You can see I pull it off right here, and you could just tuck this off to the side wherever you want to tuck it at. This one probably won't leak coolant. The other one might, so just keep that in mind. So I do advise to take this back coolant hose off first, and then once you do that, you can loosen these guys up. These 1, 2, 3, and 4, and you can actually slide this whole thing mostly off and kind of flip it around so you can get a better look at this other bottom coolant hose. So I've already got this one off, so I'm going to go on ahead and remove these other nuts now. Gotta just slide off like so. Then you can flip it around and deal with getting this bottom coolant hose off here. You can just tuck this hose up somewhere so it doesn't spill. Then you can go ahead and set this whole throttle assembly down. Okay, next thing we need to do is to focus on taking off this here Y-pipe area that we got here. Not too hard to deal with. The evap, that green thing right there and the hoses going into it, that kind of can be a pain, but because they're really fragile by now, but we'll get to it. So first off is to take this here PCV breather off. It is held on by a 10mm screw right here that I recommend just taking this off and pulling this thing out rather than trying to risk breaking this piece of plastic. Just take this off and you can pop this guy out of place. Same with this. You can just pull this guy straight out like that, and that way you don't have to worry about trying to take this here hose off. Connector that's here, it's held on by 110 right here. If you can get a 10mm and take this one little nut off right here, it's just one little guy just right here. Directly to the right of that, or directly behind this, you'll see that there is a small vacuum hose and a larger vacuum hose that are attached to this piece. Now what you want to do is slowly move both those hoses off of the nipples that they're on. If you break them, I'm sorry, you probably will, because I have, and I usually do. I don't intend to, but that's just kind of what happens because they're just really fragile. So just try your best to get them off by these here 12mm screws. There's one here, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 on the bottom. The ones from the bottom, just use long extensions to come in from right here, and then you should be able to reach them all. There are some vacuum lines underneath this guy that you need to also loosen up and remove. You'll see them once you take them off. They're small, like this guy over here. There. That should be now loose. You just slide it off. Like I said, it will be held on by some vacuum hoses that are on the bottom. If you just tilt this guy up, you can see where there's one tiny little vacuum hose that's right down here on the bottom. You could just do your best to wiggle it loose and take it off. And there's also a metal gasket that's back here. Save this gasket, you can reuse it. You can buy a new one if you want, but I always save them and just reuse them. Just like so. Right now we're gonna go on ahead and take off this here cover. It's just held on by 5mm Allen socket. You just lift this guy straight up like this. Disconnect all of the wiring harness, the coil packs. There's 3 coil packs, 1, 2, 3. They just have tabs. I can promise you they're probably going to snap off as you try to take them off. Try your best not to snap the tabs off. You probably will though, but just try your best not to. You can't really help it because they're just so old. So if you look at the wiring harness itself, the 10 is right here in the middle. Like I said, do keep track of where the screws go. So that's one guy out right here. I'm not going to disconnect these from the coil packs. All the wiring, all the spark plug wiring, I'm going to leave the same, just to make sure that you either take a picture so you remember where it goes. And I'm going to loosen up the other one right here in the middle for the other wiring harness. So now the wiring harness itself is fairly free. I'm going to take out the spark plug wires, take them out of their holders. Just be gentle with them. And just leave to the side how it is. Okay, all the coil packs are held down by a 10mm. You probably have to use a ratchet back here on this one. If you can get back there with a power tool, by all means, but you'll have to move this hose out of the way so you can get to it. Okay, so all of these now will just lift straight up off of the spark plugs that they're on. They may take a little bit of a persuasion, but they'll come off. Same with these. You just lift these guys straight up off of here like this. Do remember where they all go, so that way you don't get confused. Take yourself a picture if you need to take a picture, like I'm about to do right now, so I remember. They should just pull straight up and off like so. I would mark them however you want, 1, 2, 3, or ABC, or however you want to mark them that way you remember where they go. That, all the coil packs are off.
So in order to remove the spark plugs, get yourself a 5/16, excuse me, a 5/8, not 5/16, 5/8 spark plug socket. Yeah, you can go on ahead and remove all of these spark plugs and then just replace all of them with your new plugs of your choice. It's really nothing too serious when you go to reinstall the new ones. Start them by hand first. Don't try and use a power tool to screw them in there, because you probably could strip them. Just start them by hand and then go ahead and finish torquing them down with a normal ratchet. Okay, once you get all the new spark plugs installed and go ahead and reinstall the coil packs back into place, you should have labeled them and also taking pictures of them. They're just held on by 10mm bolts that go onto the back. These just push straight down into position. That's all. And then you'll reattach them back where they go. Then you can also put the wiring harness back into place and connect all the connectors.
Okay, so we got these spark plugs all back together and on. Okay, now we're going to focus on getting this Y piece back into place. Don't forget to wipe it off as clean as you can on the surface. If you remember, on the bottom there's some vacuum hoses that go in from here. The evap guy goes in there, and then also this small guy here on the bottom. So just do your best to get them into position. Might be a little hard to get the evap hoses on, but just do your best. All just 12mm bolts and nuts. The evap stuff tightened. There's one 10mm bolt that holds a little solenoid on. Aside from that, you just attach the vacuum lines to the small hoses that they were on, and it should be good to go. Now we can go ahead and attach the throttle body housing, remove these screws, and we'll go ahead and get the housing into place. Do not forget that there is small coolant hoses that run into the back here, and then the other one that comes along from the side over here as well. You should put this one on first, and then you can go on ahead and do the bottom one. This breather hose back on. This guy just goes right here, straight down onto here and over here like this. Also the PCV that's held on right here by this 10mm. Push this guy straight down in here. Okay, so go ahead and take the throttle assembly. Remember I said to get this hose on the bottom first, this coolant hose. Get that guy on and tightened up. It'll slide back onto the shaft here on the bottom, and then you can also reattach this coolant hose right here as well. And start these guys by hand. And remember when you go to tighten these up that this piece is rubber, so you're going to have to hold this a little bit so it doesn't damage it. Okay, once you get all those on, go ahead and tighten them up. 12mm. Those guys all nice and tightened up. Don't forget to take the electrical connector, connect it back into the throttle position sensor here. Get the bracket that sits right here on the bottom. Loosen up take all these here nuts off if you left them on, and then just get those all nice and tightened up. This guy goes connected right here. Don't forget to push the wiring harness back up into place. And go ahead and reattach this here, 10mm for this wiring harness. So we can go on ahead and get the throttle cable. Remember you just thread it into position over here on the side. It'll fall into place. So go ahead and tighten up, only tighten up the far side. The guy just sets right back on top like so, and it's held on by 1, 2, 3, 4 Allen head screws as well. Okay, we can go in and put the air box assembly back into position. This guy goes right back onto here like so. There's an arrow on top that you can line up with to get the positioning right. Then there's this vacuum hose right here that runs from the valve cover back onto the back of this here pipe. And we'll go on ahead and reattach this into here. This guy goes right onto this here evap solenoid, and the mass airflow sensor gets plugged up here, and then this little guy gets plugged up into the evap solenoid as well. The last piece of the air box we have to put on is this here piece that goes attached right here, this one 10mm. It's like the snorkel. So if you have any comments or questions, please ask them in the comment section below. If it's your first time to the channel, thanks very much for stopping by. I appreciate your guys' support and watching my videos. It really goes a long way. I will see you guys next time.